Alright, we doing this? We doing this. I'm back. After all of this time, I am finally back. And you know what? Because I don't. So... Yeah. I just wanted to give a very brief update and say that nothing has changed, which is kind of amazing. My last video, I believe, was an apology video. I was apologizing for slandering emacs, and I stand by my slander and I stand by my apology. It's true. Emacs is old and overgrown and somewhat unapproachable, and once you get into it, it's still pretty cool, but there's still parts of it that are just unbelievable that they still exist in the state they did 40 years ago. Like, come on. And I think NeoVim has a lot more potential going forward, but Emacs has a lot more actuality, and Emacs had a ton of potential. One might say the most potential in its time, and it's actualized a lot of that potential. It's a very mature program and a very mature ecosystem and language environment and all this stuff. And most of the improvements and additions to it nowadays are trying to make up for the one part of Emacs that can't be fixed, or that's hard to fix, that's hard to extend, which is the core and the graphics engine and the redisplay. Because let me tell you how Emacs works. So, once upon a time, Emacs was a TUI program, Terminal User Interface is what TUI stands for. It was a roguelike, sort of like VI or Vim, where you've got the mode line at the bottom that's just a line of text that's inverted color, and then the rest of the screen, the rest of the character cell screen, it's just text, and it's whatever text is in the file, and you can move your cursor around, and you can edit stuff, and you can use key bindings, and whenever you press a key binding, it interprets that, and if it changes the text, it'll change the text in that spot. And the way that terminal programs nowadays do that is with a library called ncurses, which is based on curses, is like the older proprietary version. And what ncurses does as well, is it translates the one terminal state into the next terminal state, so you can define your interfaces and minimize redraws, because screen redraws are expensive, especially if your terminal is like over SSH or something. There's not a lot of you don't want to be pushing all those characters over the connection, and you basically you want to be as efficient as possible with that kind of stuff when you do it. Now, ncurses is like a library that everything newer uses. NeoVim uses it. I don't know whether or not base Vim uses it. It probably does nowadays, just as an optimization. I don't know that the original VI did, but maybe. You never know. with that kind of stuff. Anyway, Emacs doesn't. Emacs has its own implementation of terminal redraw optimization, which is called redisplay, which it redisplays whatever needs to be changed, and that, and only that, and it only sends that, so the rest of the display doesn't change, it's static. And that's really good when you're drawing a terminal, because as I said before, you don't need to send anything that's already there. You just send the diff. So there was redisplay, and then somebody had the idea, hey, we could view pictures of the Emacs. We could have proportional fonts. We could have all of this fancy smancy stuff. We could have emojis. We could have animations. We could have Powerline plugins that don't have ridiculous, that you don't have to do ridiculous font patching for. And so they did that, and the way they did that is they made the GUI act like a terminal. And so Emacs opens its own terminal that is the Emacs GUI, and the Emacs GUI can spawn. The Emacs GUI acts mostly as a terminal, and it can also display images as if they were characters, and it can display proportional fonts as well. But everything is still basically just characters, and it's still basically a terminal. And that's why things like transparency and smooth scrolling have taken so long to reach Emacs. I mean, transparency isn't hardly even there, and it's in the newest Emacs 29 if you build it from source, or if you get it from somewhere that builds it from source. Like I'm using the Fedora repo, the Copper, that's got it like with native compilation and all this stuff. You can get transparent Emacs now, where like the background is transparent, but the foreground is not transparent. You can get it now, just barely now, but it's like kind of janky, and it breaks sometimes with compositors on Xorg. On Wayland, it's usually okay. On Windows, I can't even get it working at all, and nor on Mac OS. It just doesn't seem to be working. And like, this is something that terminal emulators have been doing for 20 years. This is like kind of trivial, and yet we're still here. It's 2022, and we've just added transparency. Like, what? It's whatever. It's okay. At least we have it. At least it works sometimes. I'll be honest. The background transparency was a game changer for me personally, because of the way that I like to use the terminal and always have a terminal open. Or, I can have Emacs transparent. I can have Emacs open. Now, some people like DistroTube will say that you shouldn't use terminal Emacs, you should use graphical Emacs. You should use the GUI version of Emacs all the time because it's just better. And it may be just better, but the terminal Emacs is a little bit more reliable. You lose a couple visual sugar kind of features, like you can't have the mode line look like it's all popped out, and your italic fonts might get a little bit clipped sideways, And if you're relying on bitmapped images, those won't work. By the way, but most things work just fine. And again, redisplay is super optimized, so Emacs is blazingly fast in the terminal. It's not like some of these apps in the terminal where it's like, why did you make this a terminal app? So take, for example, Browsh or brow.sh, which is a web browser in the terminal. Not one of those old style ones like Lynx or eLynx or the other links. There's two Lynxes that are spelled differently and do the same thing. But anyway, it's not one of those. It's not what W3M. What it is it runs a headless Firefox in the background, and then it converts, and then it takes the image from, it takes the display from the Firefox and redirects it and parses out the text and converts that to ASCII, and then converts everything else to like Unicode block characters in full color, and then renders that to the terminal. And it's slow. It's slow, and it's kind of weird, and the keybinds don't make sense. Honestly, you could probably try running that inside Emacs now if you've got vterm, which does all the colors. I think vterm does all the colors. It's worth a shot, you know? I don't know. But what I do know is he's called the Stig. Next topic. Anyway, oh yeah, I wanted to ask a question. If anybody knows if there is an extensible interface to add new terminal capabilities to Emacs, because, for example, the Kitty terminal, which is doing a lot of fantastic work on new terminal standards and abilities, like, well, displaying images, and I don't know if they're doing Sixels yet, but displaying images alone is pretty cool. So, and also, like, squiggly underlines that are a different color than the text is something Emacs also struggles with. So I'd like to I'd like to see if there's a way of getting Emacs to recognize that also somehow. There's a lot of things we need to work out about, like how we would do that and manage it, but Emacs inside of Kitty could be really good. It could be really, really good, even. It could be so good. It could be so great. Excuse me. Because Kitty is a pretty good terminal. I mean, there have been controversies, like the auto update and I don't remember what else, but I know the auto update has been a controversial thing. Some of the standards it's trying to put forward have some problems with them. But on the whole, I think it's a pretty cool thing that exists, and it's great that it exists to the extent that it does. And I'm not gonna die on that hill, but I'll certainly... sorry, a car just shot the gap in front of me, like kind of came up side. Now I'm behind him. Life, man, you never know. I shouldn't be talking while driving. I'm gonna stop. Bye.